Or
It's not been close to his face.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. One God, amen. Can you hear me fine? Okay. Yes? No? Just checking. You're awake? Okay. Um, I guess just I thought like, okay. What we're talking about today is one of those things that has a really probably a lot of debates and a lot of ideas and thoughts. It came. I was reading an article, and there was talking about a survey that was done to a group of people who consider themselves born again. And the question was, how many of that group has an actual biblical worldview? Their thoughts, their minds, their decisions is based on the Bible. Is based on the Bible. People who consider themselves, they have some kind of relationship with Christ. They know about Christ and they consider themselves Christian. And the question was, again, actually there were 7 questions. 7 questions. I'm going to read it to you. And as I'm reading it, think of it, and then we'll see what are we talking about today. But here were the questions. And again, this was a survey done in 2003, so a few years ago, but still gives us some idea. The first question was, do absolute moral truth exist? Absolute moral truth exist. Number 2, is absolute truth defined by the Bible? Is absolute truth defined by the Bible? What? Okay. Remember this question now. Number 3, did Jesus Christ live a sinless life? Basic, simple questions, right? Did Jesus Christ live a sinful life? Sinless, sorry. Number 4, is God the all-powerful and all-knowing creator of the universe, and does he still rule it today? Is God the all-powerful and all-knowing creator of the universe, and does he still rule it today? 5 or 6 now? Are you counting with me? 5. Is salvation a gift from God that cannot be earned? Is salvation a gift from God that cannot be earned? Very important question, next one. Is Satan real? Is he real? 2 more. Does a Christian have a responsibility to share his or her faith in Christ with other people? Does Christian have a responsibility to share his or her faith in Christ with other people? And finally, is the Bible accurate in all of its teachings? Is the Bible accurate in all its teachings? Okay? What do you think about those questions, first of all?
They're the kind of questions that they gear more to apologetics.
Okay. Remember, these were given to Christian people. Given to Christian people. Okay. Given this, yes, me, want to say something?
I've heard of this the 6 different questions.
Okay.
Very similar questions.
Okay.
And they're essentially basics of Christianity.
Okay.
And the statistics that came out of them
Yes.
was shocking as to how many people answered no to at least one, if not more, of those questions.
Very good. That's what I'm getting to. Basic questions, right? All of these are very basic questions. Very basic. It's not like real deep into theology or dogma or teaching or anything. Very basic questions, right? Again, all of it. Is the Bible real or not? Is Satan real or not? The salvation is a free gift for us or not? Very, very basic questions.
But they're complex as well, because in a sense, they're not easy questions because there's a lot of information that you need to know behind these kind of questions.
I don't believe so. I disagree with you. Because again, these are given to Christian, not to people from the outside, not people who do not know anything about God. They are given to simple, basic Christian. Yes, Mina?
I was going to say, if that person has sort of umbrella that he falls upon, or or some sort of flow of information, these are things that he would be taught. But if that person is taking it upon himself to learn by himself, these are things that some of them are, he can't just learn by himself without a foundation.
Okay, but again, for a basic, simple Christian person, who wouldn't know if Jesus Christ lived a sinless life, for example? Who wouldn't believe in that? Very simple, basic Christian person. Who wouldn't know that the Bible is accurate in all the teaching? Right? The shocking thing, which was Mina was talking about, is what was the statistics out of this survey? 4 to 9%. 4 to 9% had a biblical worldview on those questions of American. This is 2003, so we're not talking about 1800 something or about 10 years ago or so.
So if you're saying someone has a biblical worldview, it means they answer yes to all the questions.
Right. Right.
Yes, with no explanation. So just the word yes.
Right. Either yes or no. Yes or no. Basic things. And this is what we want to get into today, which is that specific thing, the worldview. What is the meaning of worldview? Is there a Christian worldview versus, or a God-focused worldview versus self-focused worldview? And how can my self-worldview be affected by that, and where does it lead me to? So again, with that group of people, not answering those questions by regular, normal answer, which is any Christian should answer. That means what? What do you think? What does it mean? Yes, Paul.
People have their own perception of Christianity.
Okay.
Some people think Christianity is just a few words that they say, like a good luck charm. Some people find it the other way around, where it's their lifestyle, and some people are in between. So the people who are living worldview use God as almost like a spice, where it's just an added flavor. And some people use God as the main dish, and the world is spices. So
So in a simple way, you're saying that I could be, yes, a Christian, but the biblical basics is not what I'm going by. It's not what I'm living with. Right? Who agrees on that? Does every Christian person live with the biblical basics as his fundamentals? No. No. Okay. Anybody can say yes? We all say no? All agree?
Are you calling Christians anybody who says, yes, I'm a Christian?
Right. Anybody who believes, basically. Yes, Simpson.
Actually, I know a lot of atheists. We have quite a bit at work, and I have sometimes too, that they celebrate Christmas with the atheism. And I asked them one day, like, it's a Christian holiday, you know, we celebrate it. He's like, yeah, but it's not really a Christian holiday. It's just something we celebrate with the kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't care.
Right. 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 And that's a very critical thing because us even as Christian who believe, and that's what we'll get into at the end, is what is determining our worldview. Let's go back again to worldview. What is worldview, first of all? What does it mean? Okay? The lens through which you see the world.
How you make decisions.
How you make decisions. What else?
Letting the temporary seem like it's the permanent, or seeing the world as something permanent when it's temporary. In other sense.
I don't think a worldview is bad.
No, I'm saying that the worldview people are people that.
Worldview is
No.
different from what you're conceiving.
Right.
A worldview is, you have a worldview, I have a worldview,
Yeah.
people
Yes.
have worldviews.
Right.
World,
A worldview is how you see the world, like other people.
exactly. So, never mind.
Chris, you want to say something?
No, it's a zeitgeist.
Hmm?
If you know what the word zeitgeist is,
No, what is zeitgeist?
it's a German word. We don't really have a word for it in English. Spirit of the times, spirit of the age. You know, what's a Christian worldview? Is Coptic Orthodox a Christian worldview or a Seventh-day Adventist a Christian worldview?
Well,
Which one?
we're talking about worldview in general.
Well, no, which one is the Christian worldview?
The Christian
See,
world.
what I think
Hmm?
you're talking about is the worldview that the person asking the questions is saying. So, for example, you're saying something. I'm not hearing what you're saying. I'm
Mhm.
hearing what I think you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who asks the question and says, "What is the one about the Bible? Is the Bible without
Is the Bible accurate in all
teachings?"
of its teachings?
And I think what a lot of people hear is, in this day and age, is the Bible accurate in all of its words? Is the Bible accurate in its translation?
Mm-hmm.
It's not what the guy's asking, that's what you hear.
It could be.
So
It-
there's some, there's some ambiguity to the question, maybe, how
Yeah.
they're perceiving that?
Possibly, you know, you could say, "Well, how are you doing?"
You're doing.
You know, yeah, it's how you take it, it's not how it's questioned. And there's a worldview implied in the way the questions are asked. Why those questions?
I'll tell you why in a minute. Yes, Marian, what do you want to say something? No?
I'm okay.
You're fine.
For now.
Yeah. It's a good point, Chris, because what we're and that's my next question is are there types of worldview or not?
Yeah.
No? Yes. Sure. Like what?
Atheist worldview, theist worldview.
Okay. So all those are what we call framed worldviews, right?
At $100, I'll kill you and take that $100.
That's worldview. Very good. That's worldview. Okay. But going back to your question, is those questions whether what's behind it? It's what we call the biblical worldview, because it's based on the teaching of the Bible. Right or wrong? When you talk about faith questions, is salvation so and so? Is Christ so and so? Is the Bible so and so? These are all based on what? On the Bible. Want to say something?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
You're waiting. You're digesting the question. Okay. Okay.
Most of them were biblical worldview
Okay.
questions, but I think one or two, I don't remember, could have been just one. It's not a biblical worldview per se, because it's asking, is the Bible true? The the Bible doesn't say the Bible is true.
Okay, but it's related,
It's a Christian worldview.
right?
I think
But
it's
and also it's related to the Bible itself. Okay,
But to say like it's a biblical worldview, I would probably say it's a Christian worldview.
okay.
But most Christians do not read the Bible in its entirety, so I think people who are answering these kind of questions would not, know how to answer these kind of questions because they haven't, fully read into they're not 100% sure about the question.
Of what they know, so they don't know what they believe in. You're saying,
Exactly.
okay, and that gets us to another question. Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't know if you can necessarily have a Christian worldview without having a biblical worldview.
Okay.
Because, like, we've always talked about how the Bible is the basics, the instructional manual, everything to live a Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you can, kind of like what Paul's saying, have a full Christian worldview without the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
What I meant was like, not everything that's Christian is a biblical truth. For example, there are Christian truths that we hold that are true as Christians, but the Bible doesn't tell us, but we know they're true. Like the fact that the Bible is true. We're Christians, so we believe the Bible is true, but the Bible doesn't tell us that.
Actually, it does.
It does.
Actually, it
The
does.
Bible tells us that
Yes,
it's true.
that's all the words are inspired by the Holy Spirit, and it's good for in Timothy, and it's good for education and for edification. So yes, it does. The Bible itself, when it's written in the Old Testament that God told Moses, okay, go and write those and give it to your children. This is it's talking about the what he wrote himself, that it's coming from God, and God actually gave him this. In many other occasions also, when God talks to many of the prophets, said, write this. It's a command from God to write and to keep it on. Yes.
Any church father after maybe the 4th century always considered the church and the Bible both sources of truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think as years we as life change and generations and so on, we always looked at the Bible but not the church. But there's a saying actually. They always say if you ask them what came first, the church or the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
they say who came first, the chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like
There-
it's like a common thing in early church fathers, like between church, holy tradition, liturgy, and the Bible.
Right.
They're all in the eyes of early church fathers as the same,
As the same thing.
or as much, not necessarily exactly the same as much as they complete each other, and one without the other is not complete.
Not complete.
Because the church is what put the Bible together.
Right.
And without the Bible, the church won't know.
Won't know what to do.
I don't think the problem is in the completion of the church and the Bible. I think the completion is, as Christians, are we completing that circle of having both church and the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
For example, you can have an individual that goes to church every week for a whole year. Every Sunday, doesn't miss a single one, but he doesn't, incorporate the Bible. Therefore, you don't have that biblical influence. For example, a person who goes to church can know the rule of you don't wear your shoes in the altar, but he may not necessarily know why,
Mm-hmm.
and not know how to reference that in the Bible, if that makes sense. So I think it's very easy for that same person that went to church every week and didn't read the Bible can still say he's a Christian, but not have that biblical worldview because he doesn't know how to incorporate the Bible in his Christian life.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I think the real issue is, as most Christians, we compartmentalize Christianity. We say that church and religion is on Sunday, and then the other 6 days is for us to do whatever. I think a lot of us as Christians we don't associate our spiritual life with our daily life.
That's my second question. That's my next question is for me as a person, what is my view of the worldview? What is my view of the worldview?
Which
Yes, Nazim. Which worldview? That's a very good question. Nazim wants to say something first.
Okay. I think that, okay, two things. I think you can, it's hard to say like that if you don't have a biblical, that if you don't have a biblical worldview, it's not like a Christian worldview.
Hmm?
Like unless it's like only biblical, you can't, like you said, can you have a Christian worldview without it being biblical? And I think that like you asked a couple questions that were like, is there black and white truth? Wasn't that one of, like the first one was like, is the truth? Is there like moral truths?
Absolute truth, yes.
Yeah, like black and white, and you know. And I think that we can separate some of like our moral worldview stuff from
Okay.
like the biblical worldview stuff.
Okay.
It's like an onion. the inside has to be biblical, but like the layers.
Okay, we were
Help
having
me.
a side conversation about an analogy.
Okay.
And the
It's
only
not
analogy
good.
that came to my
It's
head
the onion.
was the onion.
Okay.
And you know how there's lots of layers to the onions,
Uh-huh.
and you peel and you peel and you.
You
peel
said
and
all
you
this
get
right
to-
now?
I know,
Wow.
we were having a side conversation.
That's really deep. Yes.
But the layers to get to the core,
Mhm.
which is to profoundly be a Christian with a biblical worldview, you need to get to the core. And
Mhm.
sometimes we ignore that core, and if you don't preserve that piece of onion underwater, it's gonna well and it's gonna fall off. Okay, we're
It's-
gonna
it's-
work on it, and then we're gonna
Okay.
we'll work on it. We get it.
What I want to get to, right now is yes, Usam.
I think when you have a worldview, that comes back to who you are, your personality.
Right.
So if you are a little bit of a negative person, you're gonna get a negative worldview, and that's
Yeah.
how you're gonna look at it. If you're positive, you're gonna get that positive.
Right.
If you're more of a giving person, you're gonna see everything is great, but that sometimes goes into a naive worldview.
So you're saying the way you look at things affects your worldview?
Yeah,
Yes. So that's what we want. That's what.
that depends also how you are too.
Okay. So remember that one of the definitions is what? The glasses or the lenses that you put on in order to see the world. Right? So does the type of glasses that you put or the type of lenses that you put affects your vision of things? Right. Right. So how does this affect your you're so confused. Want to say something, Mark? No? How does this affect my personal worldview?
Well, that's what I wonder. See, I'm not a biology person, but back when I went to school with Darwin,
How was he?
we were having coffee, and he said something about dominant traits and recessive traits.
Okay.
Where like green eyes are a recessive trait. My wife has brown eyes, so son has brown eyes.
Okay.
Because the brown is the dominant
Mhm.
trait, the green is the recessive.
Mhm.
It seems to me, just from the man on the moon, that the Christian worldview is a recessive trait, because when it comes into contact with a worldview, it seems to wither. It's just an observation, I'm not saying it's a fact.
But that goes back to the core of the onion. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to my
Okay,
analogy, because
yes.
if we have our Christian biblical
Mhm.
worldview as our core,
Mhm.
then our worldview is not gonna be our worldview to things. We're gonna look at things differently. So, me driving a Ford Taurus
Mhm.
for work and getting stuck in a different city with no car
Mhm.
to drive back to work, I could have said a lot of things, but instead I said, at least it happened to me, not to the interns when they took the car tomorrow
Mhm.
up 3 hours away.
Okay.
Because that is my Christian
Mhm.
biblical worldview, biblical view of
Worldview,
the whole
yes.
situation
Okay.
of, all right, this is happening because it's God's will, and I had to learn. And I did my quiet time in the car because I
Okay.
was stuck.
So you use this situation to, so that's exactly what it is. That's a personal worldview that goes along with the biblical worldview, that
Exactly.
you're seeing things in a different perspective. You're seeing things in a different vision. I'll go back to Chris' point again, because you said something very, very dangerous, I think, which is what? You said that the world predominant, right?
It would seem to be.
Okay.
Let's walk out the front door, though. It would seem
Okay.
to be.
So does this mean that we're giving something that is not accurate, or we're giving a power that's really inactive? Meaning what? Meaning if the Bible teaches, Christ is teaching about certain things that we're supposed to abide with and go with, and this cannot stand in front of the world. So that does mean that what we have lacks something. Hmm?
User error.
Use
Yeah.
User error.
It's
Okay.
the trait of the person holding the view, not the view itself.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think, I'll just say, like, do you think all Orthodox, say it's all Coptic Orthodox Christians should have the same worldview, or not?
I'll answer with St. Paul that we all should have a Christian worldview,
So you
regardless
think-
of all as Christians.
So you
all
think
as
we
Christian.
all should be, you should react to the same things the same way?
Yes, get on Philippians 2 verse, starting from verse 5, because this answers the question. Because this is a very good point. But before we go to this, I want to just go again that if something is predominant, the worldview the of things is stronger than something that we supposed to be abiding by, that doesn't mean that this is the right way. It's a very dangerous thing that yes, there is a peer, yes, there is pressure, yes, there is, just anything. For example,
Love thy neighbor.
love the neighbor. Very good. Okay. What is the worldview of this? If somebody, sorry.
You want a biblical example?
Okay.
The story of the man who gave the feast
Okay.
and invited his friends and his neighbors.
Yeah.
What about the outcast and the lame and the blind and the maimed? What
Okay.
about them?
Okay.
So what is the Christian worldview? Is the Christian worldview potlucks and coffee hours, or is it who is my neighbor?
That's a very good point, because it comes to the actual, either the actual literal meaning of the parallel or the depth of it itself. The neighbor is, as again, I'll answer by the different thing, which is the neighbor is the Good Samaritan, for example. Who's the neighbor, or who's the good person? Is the one the Levite or the priest, or the person that came down and took care of that person and lifted him up and brought him back and so forth. So again, where is the Christian or the biblical worldview of this situation versus the world or the self-centered world view? You know what I'm trying to say? It's yes, this is what's supposed to be done, but we're not doing it. But we're not doing it. So here we go with two things. We have a God, let me call it this way instead of biblical and Christian, a God-focused worldview and a self-focused worldview. Right? A God-focused worldview and a self-focused worldview. Because whatever you see that's against or not the biblical or the Christian worldview, you'll see that it goes down to one thing. It's a self-centered. Agree or not agree? It's a self-centered. Going back to your example, Chris, if love your enemy or love your neighbor. If I'm not loving my enemy or not loving my neighbor, because why? Because I love myself more. Because I don't care about that person. So what becomes the main effect in that, in my worldview, becomes a self-centered worldview. It's all based on me. And that's why I put that lens that only looks at myself. That's why I put the vision that I have towards the whole world, towards everything, it's mainly for my benefit. Whether it's a desire, it's a lust, it's getting a better job, getting whatever, it's all focused or goes down to one thing, that is self-centered world or self-focused worldview. And the question here would be, how can or how come that we all should have that biblical or Christian or God-focused or God-centered worldview? How can it be sometimes diluted, I would say, into and changed into the self-focused worldview? Meaning what? You want to say something? How can the God-centered worldview diluted or changed into a self-centered worldview? What happens? What goes wrong from changing from that to that? What do you think? Surrounding. Easy way out. What else? Your knowledge. What else?
Whether you're living for your own personal success or living a life for significance for others.
Okay.
You become lukewarm.
Become lukewarm. So all those things change the ideal, the typical lens that I have into something else that I can see things different. All I can see is myself. And I see things, even though it could be very, very, very standard, I see it with my own eyes to fulfill my own desire, then I can have the different vision. Example. Somebody can give me an example.
You're like applying for a job. And of course, the whole time you're like, God, like when it is God, please let it be for your glory. God, help me. God, I love you. You know, you're in the God worldview.
Yes.
And then as soon as you hit like a stumbling block or hurdle, it's like all of a sudden like, oh my God, feel so bad for me, and how come? And then you transition into this like, you all of a sudden like, what all that stuff that happened before when you said like, for God's glory, for, you know.
Yes.
Or when you get it.
Or
you
when
forget
you
about
You
it.
get it, you forget about what.
What your view will
Right.
be.
Or looking at it like that, thinking of it as, God help me with this, God help me with this. That in itself is somewhat of a self-centered worldview.
Mhm.
It's rather, God, show me your plan. What is your path for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very good. Yes.
Do you think religion or a lot of Christians have diluted their faith by going to church as like having this view of God as being some sort of vending machine, or instead of going to church to seek be closer to God and ultimately going to heaven, it's more like I'm going to church because it's a good thing to do and my life would be better.
Right. That's what George was saying, is the knowledge is wrong knowledge. Definitely. Definitely. And that's why I was just reading today in, it says that Christ himself is the cornerstone. So every relationship that we don't have Christ as the cornerstone, it's useless. It's not going to grow, because this way, exactly, the cornerstone could be my needs. That, again, I'm coming to church because of my needs, because of I get better grades, or I have a good job, or my kids will be fine, or. And that itself is again, it's a different worldview that, I'm basing my relationship based exactly as that. I love that analogy, which is the vending machine. I push a button, I go to pray and push a button, okay, please, I want this, I want this, I want that. And if the machine doesn't work, or it's out of so you shake it and start banging your head on it. Exactly. Right. And that's when you don't get anything.
Then
You
that
don't.
machine falls.
The fall machine. But it's a very, very important thing. And that's why I was saying, yes, Paul, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was actually having dinner with one of my old high school teachers, and we had this conversation about. I was just looking at the fork, and I told him, you know, the eating part, you know, the prongs part, and then the handle part.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this prong part. Okay, this prong part is our life, and this handle part is our eternity, and we're so focused on this prong part that we forget about the handle part. And then I think this is the main issue, that we're only focused on the prong part, that we forget about other people. We forget about, we're so focused on what we need to succeed in that little prong part, and so we forget the rest of our eternity, in a sense, because we're so focused on it. I know I'm not saying it.
No,
perfect there, but
that's exactly what we're saying. Is you focus, you start those things. That's why your worldview and your vision changes from focused on God to that self-centered worldview, and that's why if you, like as we are sitting right now, if you just examine and challenge yourself, okay, what affects my worldview of anything that you talk about or you think of. Does it, or is it my beliefs, the personal belief that affects my worldview of things, or is it things from the outside, or is it something that various systems around me that affects my worldview of certain things? As we said, like very simple example of my relationship with each other. Is it based on a godly worldview or some self-centered worldview? Meaning what? Meaning, again, as Chris was saying, if somebody treat me in a bad way, would I revenge and start a fight and hatred and or I have that different reaction of what it's not about me, it's not about myself. Maybe I'll even pray for that person because maybe he or she is having trouble. That's why they're acting this way, or maybe they're having issues, or whatever the reason is. I try to look at it in a different way. And that would be the question. That would be, how can we have our personal worldview, which is a lot of times self-centered, goes along and sink into God's centered worldview. Mina wants to say something first, and then Paul.
No, like you keep saying the word worldview. It reminds me of the organization World Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And their entire purpose, like if you look at their mission statement, it talks about that you have the eyes of God, the eyes of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
to look at the poor, marginalized, homeless, orphans. I'm not saying that's the only way to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, you kept saying that, it reminded me of like World Vision. It's how do you what's your purpose in like, is all you do purposed for self-gain,
Mm-hmm.
or is what you do purposed to help others succeed as well, not just in a materialistic earthly way, but in a means to like lead them to salvation too.
Right.
Like, are you focused on your salvation first? Yes, but then after that, what's after that?
Right. See, it's very important because it's very, very easy to get along, as we said, to get along with the kind of normal or the predominant. Everybody's thinking that way. Everybody's doing this. There's nothing wrong about this. It's okay to do so and so. Very easy to do this way. There's no challenges. There is no trouble. There is no struggle. There is nothing. Just going with the flow. Versus no, I'm going to stop and I'm going to stand and I'm going to see exactly where is this leading to and what does affect and what is affecting my worldview of looking at the certain things. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of also confessing that I cannot do it on my own. And that's exactly what we're reading to now in Philippians 2. Paul, you want to say something first?
Yeah. I think here's the problem. Here's the reason why we are so self-centered. It's because we're so focused on this short time that we're living,
Mm-hmm.
that anything that takes away from our goal or whatever we want in life we want to take anything away that's going to like decrease our chances of getting our goal.
Mm.
So if it is stopping by and helping this elderly lady cross the street or whatever, we will miss that because we want our goal because we only think about the short time that
We're
we
looking
have.
at just under our feet. That thinking that both together is what St. Paul talks about in one word, which is what? And if my worldview, exactly, if my personal worldview syncs with God's worldview, meaning what? We both have the same mind, same mind. And that's exactly what St. Paul is talking about. Verse 5, can you scroll up to 9, I think. Who can read? Go ahead, George.
Where am I reading?
Slowly and loud, clear. From 5 to 9.
Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to equal with God, but made himself to no reputation,
Of no.
taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men.
Okay, let's stop at this point. Okay, what does he say again? Let this what? What's mind? Whose mind? Hmm? Which is also Jesus Christ. So that's the mind of Christ. What is the mind of Christ? Based on this. What did Christ do here?
Humbled himself.
Okay, there are 3 things. What is it?
No reputation,
Bondservant,
obedience.
obedient, and the death, the cross. So those 3 things, and one leads to the other. One leads to the other. أول حاجة, the first thing اللي هو أطاع حتى الموت. He number 1 is actually bondservant. Is he came down, what we call the self-emptiness. Self-emptiness. He emptied himself, so came down. So the first thing of the mind of Christ is self-emptiness. Number 2, self-emptiness led to what? To obedience. To obedience. And obedience led to being able to offer himself, and being able to sacrifice, and being able to have the pain, being able to have the discomfort. And this is the mind of Christ. This is, if you go back again to the whole thing about the worldview, and in order to have my worldview, the self-centered, sync with God's worldview, is I have to have those 3 things, which is the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ, which is, again,
Can you repeat them? So empty yourself.
empty yourself, which is humbleness. That's number 1. Number 2 is humbleness leads to obedience, and the obedience leads to being able to sacrifice, to suffer. Because if you look at it again, if anything, you're taking anything out of myself, taking myself out of anything that always has what in it? If I'm taking myself out of any picture. Pride. Taking has what? What does it go along with? Is it easy? Is it comfortable? Pain. There's always pain. Taken is pain. It's painful. It's painful to get myself out of the picture. It's painful not to think about myself. It's painful to take somebody to say, bad word at me, and I am not going to reply and say something bad to him. It's painful to take my desires away and leave him alone. It's painful. But that's what it takes in order for my worldview to go to his worldview. Self-emptiness, obedience, and able to sacrifice, able to leave, able to take out. And that's why anyone will say those are very, very, very hard things. Nobody can do that. Nobody can do that, right? Who is willing to go through the pain and go through the suffering and go through? But what's very good is this is Christ's mind. So if he was able to humble himself and empty himself and come and become a man and become live like one of us, then he is willing to make us also do the same thing. And this is the mind of Christ. This is what we're talking about. This is what this whole thing about is how to have my mind syncs with God's mind, having the mind of Christ. From here we see that those things will definitely be the way in order to have my mind as Christ's mind. And that's why in another way, where in 1 Corinthians 12, he said that, but we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of Christ. What is the mind of Christ? That is the mind of Christ. Is humble yourself, is obey, is being willing to sacrifice, willing to suffer. You know, the big thing is the willing to suffer, because we all want it easy. Nobody wants to suffer, right? Who wants to suffer? No. We all want to run away from suffering. We don't want the suffering. We don't want, again, being back to the same point again, is the world is predominant. Because we don't want to suffer. We don't want to be the special people. We don't want to be the different people. There is suffering. There is, you know, I'm different. I'm not like anybody else. My worldview is different than anybody's of the worldview. You know, the Bible says, for example, any relationship out of marriage is adultery. But no, worldview said that it's fine. There's no problem with that. And I'll go along with it. That's okay. Because I don't want to suffer. I don't want to sacrifice. I don't want to keep myself away from sin. I don't want to suffer that you know what, I'm controlling and having God controlling my desires and. But that's the way to get to my mind will be the same as the mind of Christ. The same as the mind of Christ. The same thing as John said in John 3, I believe, when he was talking about John the Baptist, when he was talking about Christ. What did he say? That he must increase and I decrease. This is the same thing. In order for me to have that mind of Christ, in order for me to have that biblical or God-centered worldview, I have to decrease. And decreasing mean again, humble. And humbling mean again, obedience. And obedience meaning again, sacrifice. See? They're all built on each other. They're all built on each other. But without that, I'm not going to decrease. And he will, if I don't decrease, he will never increase. And if you look at any struggle that we have, it all goes on that point. Any struggle that we have in our spiritual life, it all goes on that point. I don't want to decrease. I don't want to decrease. Never. It has to be myself. It has to be me. It has to be my ego. It has to be my comfort. It has to be my desire. It has to be whatever it has to be. But it all goes down to that thing. We've been talking about service before. It all goes down to the same point. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer for him, for his sake. I don't want to suffer for his sake. I'm comfortable this way. I'm fine this way. Okay, it's fine this way. But what is this leading to? What is this leading to? It leads to one thing, that my mind is not the same as Christ's mind. And if both our minds don't sync together, then it's a separation. It's a separation. Separation here and separation eternal. So we can analyze it as much as we can. We can have different philosophy about the world view. I was going to say world vision, I think. The world view. And we can come up with too many analysis and too many meanings and. But it goes down all to one thing. To one thing. I have to have the mind of Christ. As for us, let us have the mind of Christ. فَلْيَكُنْ فِينَا فِكْرٌ مَسِيحٌ. It's a process? Yes, it's a process. It's a struggle? It's a struggle. It's a long term that will always go along and go through the way till the final day? Yes. Yes. We're not going to say, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 days, and then my mind will have the same mind of Christ, and that's it, I'm done. No. No. It doesn't work this way. It doesn't work this way. It's a continuous struggle till we reach to the fullness of Christ. That's what St. Paul said, right? To the fullness of Christ. When can we reach the fullness of Christ? Are we ever going to reach the fullness of Christ? It's a continuous thing. till, as it said, like now we see as in a mirror, but there we'll see him as he is, face to face. And that's the point. That's the important point. That we need to analyze what we're doing. We need to think what affects our thoughts, what affects our worldview, what affects our decision, what affects everything that we do. Yes, no.
See, the Bible said, guard your heart with all depth.
Right,
Because out of it is the issues of life.
right.
And also Paul was saying also in Philippians 4 that whatever is true and whatever is just,
Mhm.
say, dwell in these
Mhm.
things.
Right.
And also, if your eye is single, the whole body is single.
Right.
So I think it's our duty to actually teach ourselves these things. And, when Jesus says, learn from me,
Mhm.
because I'm gentle,
Gentle.
and humble.
Yes.
So it's like you say, it's a process.
Yes.
You just have to keep learning. these
Right,
things.
right, exactly, exactly. It's exactly beautiful. That's what it is. That's what it is. We have to remind ourselves each time. And each time we look at him, each time we remind ourselves to be like him. Each time we spend some more time with him, that will get us into that depth, into being like him, being like him. And if we have two people who are, start to be friends with each other, it takes a while till they know each other. And the more they spend time with each other, the more they feel more comfortable, feeling more, to the point that sometimes, you catch up like a phrase or something that my friend is always saying, right? Because I'm spending so much time with so-and-so, then, all of a sudden I find myself doing the same thing as he's doing. Like why? And that's what it is. That's what it is. The same thing with our relationship with God. By doing this, then it's like tuning together the mind to have that mindset, mind of Christ. Right? It's something that could sound like it's a very, very basic, very simple thing, but it's something that affects our life in a very, very, very big way. And sometimes we take it as a basic that we don't even think about it. Like, why are we acting this way? Why are we thinking this way? What is affecting our way of looking at the world? Am I looking with the glasses and the lenses of Christ, or with my own lenses? It makes a huge difference. I was just talking to somebody this morning. It makes a huge difference going to work just for myself, or going to work and I know that God is going to use me today. I'm leaving my house in the morning with what purpose? Am I leaving my house just another day? Let's go. Or no, God, please use me this day for your glory. You see everything in a different way, in a different way. You see everybody in a different way. You see the challenges in a different way. You see the blessings in a different way. And it's all because that mind of Christ, that I'm looking at things, it's totally different. If I get a trouble or get a challenge at work or something, maybe it's a way to get me closer to God. Maybe it's a way to like stop for a minute and just lift up my mind and my heart and say a quick prayer, instead of like, why is this happening to me? It's different. I can react this way and I can react this way. It's a matter of how I train myself, how I train my mind, how I train. What am I focusing on? I'm focusing on Christ. Focusing on Christ. And this is what we should take with us. This, in order for this to be a practical thing, let's do this in the week. Let's practice this. Like when we leave in the morning our houses for whatever we're doing, whether it's a college, work, job, house, whatever, let's put this to have that mind of Christ with us. To look at things with the lenses and the glasses of Christ. And you'll see wonders. You'll see things totally different. You'll see you'll see a meaning of what you're doing. The challenges become an opportunity. The downtime will become time for praises, time of prayer, time of calling, time of experiencing God's work with us. And that's what it is. Paul said something very good earlier today, that we separate our spiritual life from our practical life. This is different time, and now it's time for real life. No, it's not. And that's why we have that mind of Christ. Let's just remember those things. Self-emptiness, humility, or obedience. Number 3 is the willing and to sacrifice, the willing to suffer for His. Then we will have that God-centered worldview instead of self-centered worldview. Any questions? objections, additions, comments?
Well, I hope, when you talk about separating out the practical from the spiritual and what have you, I hope it doesn't, we were watching, Discovery Channel thing about the chiefs of staffs of the presidents, and the chief of staff under the first President Bush, Leon Panetta, was talking about when the president had to make some important decision. He said he saw him in the Oval Office behind his desk with his head down, his hands full. And he said, I can't tell you for sure, not inside his mind, but I believe the president was praying.
Let's pray.
And then Leon Panetta, the chief of staff, he said, well, for me, I'm Catholic, I wait until Sunday to pray. That's a funny way of putting it,
Yeah,
but I hope
but
that's not what it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
means.
yeah. And you know, that's very practical. That's very practical. We live kind of double life, and that's why we suffer. That's why we suffer. That's why we don't see Christ in everything that we do. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. We can stand for prayer. Okay, we can see one song, and then as we're standing, and then we can.